I wanted to do a quick video, part one, talking about mediumship and spirit communication for me personally. So, like I said in my video, my intro video that I just posted, it's Tuesday evening. A young lady wanted me to do this, so I'm going to do it in parts. So, like I said in my past video, I was about 9.5 when I realized that ghosts were ghosts. I was seeing ghosts ever since I was probably 2 or 3 years old. I actually had a near-death experience when I was a baby. I used to have very, very bad seizures and from high fevers. And still to this day, I have issues with fevers. Like a 101 fever to a person is bad, but it's even worse for me. So, I had seizures, and my godmother actually stuck her finger, she's since passed, stuck her finger down my throat. I was told this later on in life, and I actually left a scar on her hand. Well, I don't remember a lot from my childhood, which it's extremely spotty because I had a very abusive childhood. And I vaguely remember an event in the hospital. And this is the first time I'm sharing this with anyone. I think I've only shared it with one person my entire life, so this is interesting. So I remember being in the hospital, and I was in the hospital bed, and I think I was 3 years old. Now, mind you, I don't remember many things from my childhood. I remember some events, mostly very bad events. So when I look at pictures of me, which are very few of me as a child, it's not like everyone else where it's you look at the picture and you go, oh, I remember that. I look at it and it's like I'm looking at a stranger. And that has to do with the abuse and the chemicals in your brain, that when you're abused so badly or tragic things happen to you, your chemicals in your brain as a child block it out. So, and this is where a lot of children develop, what's it called, multiple personality disorder or schizophrenia. And so I thought for a really long time, probably around the time of 13 or 14, that I had multiple personality disorder. And I'll explain that in another video. I know right now, as an adult, that I don't have that. However, I will give reasons why I think that, or I thought that for a long time. So I remember being in the hospital bed, and it was in a room where it only had one door in and out, and my bed faced the door. So I remember vaguely hearing either my godmother, my mom, or someone, maybe the nurse, saying that my dad was going to come to visit. I don't remember a lot of what the room looked like or anything. However, I remember laying in the bed, which was a small bed because I was a child, and I remember I was by myself, and you could see the light from the hallway. And I remember a very light caress on my head. And I heard, Chrissy, because that's what they used to call me. Chrissy, everything's going to be okay. And it was like almost like a pet on my head. And I remember feeling this overwhelming light. Like, I can't explain it. It was like a warmth, but without the heat. Just very comforting. And I felt like very at home. And I wondered who it was because it was a woman's voice. And so, you know, I thought I was sleeping, whatever. I don't know. I don't know what I thought. But a few minutes later, I hear the voice of my dad. And when I opened my eyes, he was the only one in the room. So now I started remembering this memory when I was 23. And it's weird. I had never remembered it up until then. And I was living in an apartment with my ex. And it always happens when tragic things happen that this spirit comes around me. So, okay, so that was a tragic event where I almost died. Well, now many years later, there was one more event in between when a friend of mine died that I had the spirit come again. Now, mind you, I didn't realize this was spirit coming to me until many years later, and then I connected the dots. So, it happened when I was 15 when a friend of mine died, which I'll explain in a minute. And then it happened when I was 22, 23. So me and my ex were living in this apartment in Milford by the beach. And we had this really bad storm. And we lived on the second floor. And the person who owned the house that rented it had the heater, like all the stuff that was for the house in the basement, which we did not have access to, only the first floor did. And she evacuated with her children. So me and my ex were in the house, and somehow the heat got shut off. So we almost died. I mean, I'm seriously like, if I look back on it now and I wonder why I'm still here. So, freezing weather. And we had like one of those little plug-in, heaters. And I had a moment when I was laying in the bed, and this was after the heat came on and all that, and I started realizing how stupid we were for staying there. I was laying in the bed, and I remember feeling this overwhelming stress and anxiety from being so poor and stressed out, not having food in the house, being so cold, and realizing that finally the heat went back on, and feeling very alone, okay? And I remember I was laying on the bed, and my bed faced the door, so I could see the door, and his side of the bed was on the other side. And I remember I was in a sleep, but not really asleep, or at least I thought I wasn't in a sleep. And I was laying there, and I felt the same presence that I did as a child in the doorway. And I saw a shape, and it wasn't a woman this time. So I don't know if maybe when I was 3 I didn't realize it was a man's voice, or maybe I thought it was a woman's voice. I'm not really sure. But it was definitely a male energy in the doorway. And I remember when I looked at the energy, I felt an enormous comforting feeling like I did as a kid. So when I realized this memory, I realized the next day when I started thinking about it that it wasn't a dream, because what happened was I remember laying there and asking whoever up above, because, I used to follow Roman Catholic, right? I used to follow church all up until I was 35. So, I was feeling really, really alone, and I felt like I didn't have that much faith, and that God wasn't listening to me. But since then, and I'm not judging anybody who's religious, I realized why, because that wasn't the path I was meant to be on. So anyways, as I was laying in the bed, all of a sudden I felt the same presence of comforting on my head again and saying to me, Chrissy, everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. Just have faith in your path. And I remember thinking, wow, I felt just overwhelming love. I can't even explain it. And that was that. So then fast forward to when I went through a lot of really fucked up shit, basically, when I was going through a separation. And it's just a long story I don't really want to get into on here. I went through a moment on the beach. And I can say it here, I tried to commit suicide. And it's the only time in my whole life that I ever tried to. Obviously, it didn't happen. And the same spirit came to me on the beach. And so a lot of people don't know that I tried that. So when I talk about suicide, I'm talking from the heart. I'm talking from experience. I'm talking from loneliness. I'm talking from pain, immense pain and loneliness and sadness, abandonment issues, abuse, never feeling self-worth, always being shitted on, not having any kind of unconditional love ever. What I mean by unconditional love is that one person that will do anything for you and your family. And I'm not trying to offend anybody in my family, but I have never felt that before. Ever. Ever. And my mom made sure my entire life that I was with her that I knew that I wasn't worth shit. And that's a sad thing to say out loud, because, I don't have any ill worth towards her. She's since passed, and I didn't want her to suffer when she was dying, but that really affects you as a child, never mind being a child with an ability. So these children that I see on the news that are committing suicide, it breaks my heart, because I know a lot of them are like me. So I'm going to cut this video off because we're at 9 minutes, but I'll come back to part 2, and I'll discuss a little bit more about the spirit experience that I had and how I realized that they were ghosts and spirits of people who have passed, and why I think they're my spirit guides. So I'll be back, and thank you for watching.